Guess what? I have taken back what is mine. I have possessed my possession. Too bad. You cannot see how happy and beautiful we are together. Happy with my money. Nneoma fired back angrily. Ebube laughed. What do you plan to do with the money? You have no one. Your mother abandoned you years ago. Your father left you and died. And now you are blind. What do you need all this money for? Nneoma was the only daughter of Anichebe, the great winemaker in the whole of Agugu village. Anichebe produced the best wine, attracting people from far and near in their hundreds to buy from him. Anichebe's wine, as it was fondly called, tasted like it was the angels in heaven that prepared it themselves. His wine was supernatural. It would brighten the day of anyone who tasted it, no matter how bad their day had been. Anichebe made millions of naira daily because of how good he was at what he does. Money was not his problem. He had only himself and his daughter to fend for after his wife left him to marry another man. So he had enough money in his hands. He made sure Nneoma did not lack anything. Clothes, shoes, bags, jewelry. Nneoma had everything. She just had to say Jack, and her wish would come true. Anichebe gave her the treatment of a queen. Nevertheless, Nneoma did not let this wealth get into her head. She was still humble and could relate to anyone as long as the person was a human being. From its very tender age, Anichebe began to teach his daughter about the wine business. He dreamed that Nneoma would take over the business when he became too old to handle it, or maybe even when death came to take him. Every day, Nneoma would follow her father to his winery to see how the wine was being made. Her father would lead her to the large bowl filled with grapes for the wine, and they would mash it together and produce the best wine you ever tasted. This brought so much joy to Anichebe because even though his wife had left him, he still had his daughter by his side, and she grew up to be a very fine woman. Nneoma attended the notable University of Abuja in Nigeria. She was a dedicated student, focused on her studies, and did not allow any form of distraction. It was there she met Ebube. Ebube was endowed. She had a gigantic chest, a slim waist, and a huge hips, the type usually called hourglass figure. Her body figure brought attention whenever she passed, and the other ladies were insecure around her, so they did not associate themselves with her. All ladies except Nneoma. They had met on the first day of school during clearance and registration, and the girls clicked instantly and became friends. As fate would have it, they were both in the same department. They sat together every day at the same spot. In fact, they did everything together. Wherever you saw one, you were sure to see the other. They became so close that everyone in their faculty started calling them twins. Unlike Nneoma, Ebube was not from a wealthy family. In fact, she could be described as poor, very poor. But thanks to Nneoma, Ebube had a place to stay and food on her table. Nneoma was that selfless. She saw Ebube as the sister she had never had. She had money to spare, and so she made sure that Ebube lacked nothing. Then there was Charles. Rich, fine boy Charles. Charles was the rich bad boy in Nneoma's department. He was handsome and every lady's dream man, not just in their department but on campus. Charles had a thing for Nneoma. He liked her. But Nneoma was not cut out for such. In fact, she had promised her father to not go into any relationship at school except her books until she graduated. She was bent on keeping that promise. Even though Charles's constant letters, gifts and gestures woke up the butterflies sleeping in Nneoma's belly, She killed them before they even started to fly. But Charles was a lover boy now. He spoiled Neoma with expensive gifts, sent her flowers constantly. The first time Ebube experienced how in love Charles was with Neoma, she was surprised. They had returned from classes that day to meet a surprise package waiting for her in her room, decorated with flowers. Apparently, Amanda, Neoma's roommate, had helped him plan. Ebube was flabbergasted. Wow, Charles did all this for you? Ha! I've been trying to get that guy with all of this, Ebube said as she turned around slowly, swaying her hips. And he is pursuing you. He must really be into you then. Ebube smiled sheepishly. She always had a huge liking for Charles, but he never paid any attention to her. This should have been Neoma's cue to stay away from Ebube, but she did not read any meaning into what Ebube was saying. They all laughed it off as a casual joke. As usual, in the days that followed, gifts continued to come in from Charles, followed by love letters. It was torture for Ebube. The gifts came in sporadically. Some days it came in 3 times. The worst torture was the day Charles came with his escorts to see Neoma. Neoma became the center of attraction. Pictures and videos were taken. In seconds, Neoma became famous on campus. She started trending and was tagged Charles's Juliet. Abi, is it the day Charles asked Neoma to be his girlfriend? Ebube almost sank into the ground because Charles made a public display of it. But then Neoma declined, promising to only offer him friendship. Charles was happy with that. At least, half bread is better than one akara. As the days went by, Charles and Neoma became very close friends, even closer than she was to Ebube. Charles even introduced Neoma to his parents and they loved her immediately. They became like her parents too. Amanda was genuinely happy for Neoma. It had always been her dream for the Charles and the Neoma ship to finally sail. It was not exactly how she envisioned it, but friendship was a good start. But Ebube felt left out. However, she did not speak out her mind though. She did not mind Neoma being close to her again, but she hated the fact that it was with the man she had always loved. What hurt her the most was that despite throwing herself at Charles, he never even looked at her side. However, she did her best to mask her feelings. She did not let it affect the friendship she had with Neoma. Of course, the friendship was beneficial to her. If she left Neoma where she once sleep, what would she eat? She was not ready to lose that friendship, and so she swallowed everything. Unfortunately, in their last year in school, tragedy struck. Charles's father and mother died in a car accident. Charles had no idea, not even the smallest one, how to handle the family business. So he ran it to the ground, continued to spend recklessly and live lavishly until there was nothing left. He lost everything in the twinkle of an eye. His status, his reputation, his friends, the ones who helped him lavish his money when he was rich, disappeared. He was no longer the rich boy everyone knew. He went from being famous to being forgotten. Ebube lost interest in Charles immediately because his prestigious era had died. However, in all this, Neoma stood by him. She helped him pay his rent and offered him free tutorial lessons, at least to help him pass his schoolwork. Basically, she was the only friend he had left. This touched Charles's heart so much. Why don't you just date me already? Charles asked Neoma one day during one of their tutorial sessions. I'm serious, Neoma. I don't see myself loving any other person. Deep down, Neoma wanted him to swoop her off her feet immediately. but her promise to her father was priority. "I can't, Charles. I want to, but I can't. If you can wait, maybe this could be a possibility," Norma said. After that incident that day, Charles stayed completely away from Norma. Even though she wanted to go close to him, he never made himself available. "If she can't be with me, then it's better I stay completely away from her," he thought to himself. Life continued. After graduation, they all went their separate ways. Amanda traveled out of the country. Ebube went back to Calabar where her parents lived. And as for Charles, no one heard from him again. Norma, on the other hand, returned to Agugu to continue her passion, winemaking in her father's vineyard. In no time, Norma was already an expert. Just like her father, her wine was beyond good, and their customers increased. Thanks to her educational background, they started to have international clients at their store. Anichebe's wines moved from Nigeria to other African countries, and from there, it moved into the European nation. Anichebe began to worry. The store was not able to produce and fulfill demands because the number of customers was increasing day by day. Every day he would watch how difficult it was to meet the timeline given to them by their clients, and it was even harder because their customers refused another winemaker, so getting an extra winemaker was not an option. That was when he decided that Norma would oversee the opening of a new factory, the factory he had been secretly building in Abuja. Norma did not buy the idea. She did not want to leave her father. "Papa, you can just send one of your experienced workers. I don't want to leave you." She grabbed her father's hand and stared into his eyes, pleading with him. She did not want to go back to anything that would remind her of Charles, or worse, the chance of meeting him. Anichebe already thought about sending one of his workers, but none of them had the fingers Norma had. Plus, Abuja is a big and influential city in Nigeria. This was a fresh start. Only Norma could bring that uniqueness to their brand. After much argument, he was finally able to convince Norma to go, promising her to send his most experienced and trusted worker, Chidi, to go with her. Chidi and Norma were very close. They had run around the vineyard as children and knew each other's secrets. Deep down, Chidi loved Norma, but how could he bring himself to tell her that when Norma reminded him every day that he was the brother she never had? He did not go to school like Norma. He began as a child in Anichebe's vineyard until he grew into a fine young man. Now, he knew everything there was to know about the wine business. He was thrilled when Anichebe told him about his plan and did not hesitate to agree, especially since Norma was involved in the plan. Over the next few weeks, preparations were made and Norma, with Chidi by her side, moved to Abuja. That was where Norma's ordeal began. Norma resumed work immediately at the wine factory with Chidi. This factory was bigger and more standard than the one in the village. She already had her plans mapped out for this company. She had friends in the university who were looking for jobs, so she decided to employ some of them. One of those she employed was Ebube, who she made her personal assistant. Ebube had been jobless for months, and so she reached out to Norma to help her get a job, any job at all. Thankfully, a new job opening came, and Norma employed her with no hesitation, even though Chidi was not very comfortable with that idea. "She's my best friend, Chidi. It's the least I can do for her," Norma argued. Weeks after the Abuja factory had fully resumed operation, more applications began to flood in. It was as if they rang a bell, summoning all the jobless people in Nigeria to gather together. The factory was packed with graduates. skilled workers, desperate men, ambitious women. Everyone wanted a place in the famous Anichebe's winery. The name alone had a passport to becoming the person you wanted to be. It carried weight and respect, and now, under Nneoma's leadership, it carried a new vision. Then one day, someone unexpected walked into Anichebe's winery in search of a job. Charles, the last person Nneoma wanted to see. Chidi warned Nneoma against employing him. This man is not to be trusted, Nne. Did you not say he left you and disappeared immediately after school? Or is he not the one? But Nneoma was carried away by her emotions, and so she employed Charles. What Nneoma would never know was that Agba had already gone ahead of her. She and Charles had been in a relationship for a while now. In fact, it was because of her that Charles had suddenly disappeared from Nneoma's life. Agba was jealous of the life that Nneoma had. She wanted that life too and would do anything to get it. She had a plan, and bringing in Charles was just the first stage of her plans. Now that Charles was an employee in the factory, he started trying his best to get closer to Nneoma. Whenever they were on their work break, he would buy lunch for her and patronize her with gifts. It became an everyday ritual that everyone began to notice. Charles knew her very well, and he was certain that gifts and quality time were her love language. Nneoma's feelings rose from the dead again and became even stronger than before. She, out of excitement, told her father about Charles and how much he had fallen in love with him. And because Anichebe would do anything to see his daughter happy, Anichebe approved of Charles and Nneoma's relationship. Charles was the perfect boyfriend. He treated Nneoma like the queen she was. He was like her father, right there in Abuja, her knight in shining armor. If Charles could lick her feet, he certainly would. Charles was every woman's dream, especially the women in Anichebe's winery. Everyone envied Nneoma's perfect life. Like, who wouldn't? Things were moving well in the factory, so well. Everything was good until it wasn't. The records began to drop. They were making sales, but there was no evidence to show for it. Nneoma had a private meeting with Chidi to ask what exactly was going wrong. But Chidi was as shocked as she was. Indeed, he was the managing director, so he knows and is in charge of the affairs of what goes on in the factory day after day. However, he could not place his hand on who was embezzling money from the account. The surprising thing is that all the money removed from the account was approved by Nneoma herself, because every transaction is sent to her office for her to sign in. Nneoma could not give her father this report, so she decided to take matters into her own hands and investigate the change of events. She announced it to every one of her staff, warning that the thief would bear terrible consequences. A few days later, the cat came out of the bag. Charles, who was the accountant, brought the transaction documents Chidi had been making behind Nneoma's back. There were thousands and millions of transactions that Chidi had carried out without Nneoma's approval. Allegedly. Nneoma was dumbfounded at the news, so she sent for him immediately. Of course, Chidi denied the accusations and defended himself, but the evidence was as clear as day. He stood in front of Nneoma's desk. Nneoma did not bother to ask him to sit. She did not raise her voice at him either, because of their history. "Chidi," she said softly, "something is wrong." Chidi nodded slowly. "I know." The silence between them stretched. His heart beat as if he knew what was coming. The numbers don't add up, Chidi. Sales are happening. Others are leaving the factory, but the records. She shook her head. It's like money is walking out without footprints. What is going on? Chidi's brows tightened. Every transaction that leaves this company passes through your desk, Nne. You approve them. That's how you designed it to be. I know, Norma said quickly, eyeing him from head to toe. Chidi, I need you to step aside. Chidi was shocked. Step aside? How? You want me to resign? Norma nodded. Wait, Chidi said. You think I'm the thief, don't you? He asked slowly. I did not say that, oh. Are you? Norma asked. Chidi's head nearly exploded. How could you think such about me, Norma? I have worked for your father for over 20 years. In fact, we literally grew up together in the winery. And not for once has your father had any reason to doubt me. Then, your boyfriend shows up and suddenly I'm a thief? Norma scoffed. I'm trying to be nice to you, Chidi. It could get worse if I bring in the police. Chidi's heart broke. He looked like he was going to cry. Without saying anything, he nodded and walked out. Charles, from where he sat, was grinning from ear to ear. I'm so proud of you, Nne. Your father will be so proud of you. It is you I should thank. You exposed his wickedness. Thank you so much. Charles could not be more happier. This action from Charles made Norma trust him more. Without hesitation, she promoted him to the managing director, Chidi's role. In all this, Norma did not tell her father because she knew he would still take Chidi's side. And for some reason, Chidi also did not tell Anichebe what was going on. Norma was so blinded by the love she had for Charles that even when the staff complained about his bad behavior at work, she defended him. Ever since he was promoted to the position of the general manager, he changed his attitude completely. Pride engulfed him. He walked like there were 50 shoulder pads on his shoulders. He resumed work whenever he chose. But no one complained again because they were sure Norma would take his side. Love is blind, Abby. 6 months into their relationship, Charles proposed right there in her office. Norma was excited. She could not believe her luck. This was the man she trusted, the man who had been there for her since her days in the university and was still patient enough to come back for her. The man who saved her business from Chidi's tactics, the man her father approved of, the man who had become her anchor in Abuja. Yes, she whispered, tears spilling freely from her eyes down her cheeks. Charles's face lit up as he slid the ring into her finger, stood up and hugged her tightly. She called her father immediately. Papa, Charles proposed! She screamed at the top of her voice, looking at the diamond ring Charles gave her. But on the other hand, there was silence. There was no response. The next thing Norma heard was a strange sound like a thud, like someone had fallen. She called out to her father again and again, then the line went dead. She tried calling him back, but there was no response. Her heart dropped. She kept calling, and within a few hours, a call came from Agugu village. The news turned her excitement to devastation. The tragedy arrived before the celebration had even settled. Her father, Anichebe, had collapsed. Her father was not too old, so she never expected him to die so soon. Norma took the next flight to Agogo, leaving Charles in charge of the wine factory. She rushed to the village immediately, her heart pounding harder with every mile that separated her from Abuja. Unfortunately, by the time Neoma arrived at the village hospital, her father was gone and the compound was already filled with mourners. The man who raised her alone, the one who made her life heaven on earth, the foundation of everything she knew, was now lifeless in front of her. Neoma screamed until her voice broke and her chest ached badly. She held his cold hands, begging him to wake up, begging him not to leave her alone in a world that suddenly felt too large and too cruel. Neoma refused food. She refused to be comforted. She refused to sleep. Charles did not come. He stayed back in Abuja, insisting that someone had to hold things together. She agreed. It made sense to her. She trusted him. That trust would cost her everything she owned. The days turned into weeks and weeks into one full month. Neoma mourned deeply and withdrew from everyone. The wine that once smelled like life now reminded her of loss, pain, and tragedy. She buried her father with honor, but grief refused to leave her heart. Eventually, she decided to return to Abuja to face life again. Maybe it would help her recover. On her way back to Abuja, tragedy struck again. Neoma had decided to go by road. She wanted enough time to herself for her to reason, to think, to reminisce. The road was long and quiet. There were not many people traveling during that period. Neoma sat by the window, her head resting lightly against the seat, replaying memories of her father in her mind. Then it happened. There was a loud honk, a flash of headlights. The driver stepped on his brakes and there was a violent screech of tires. Everything exploded before Neoma's eyes. The glass shattered and metals crushed with terrifying force. People screamed in pain, some calling on God, others frozen in shock. The bus spun wildly before slamming into the roadside. Their bodies collided with each other and their bags and luggages flew into the air. Blood began to spill, staining the floor. Neoma felt herself thrown forward, her head hitting something hard. A sharp pain shot through her skull, and then darkness welcomed her. She did not mind death taking her to meet her father. Life had no more meaning to her. But then she thought of Charles and everyone she would leave behind. There was no one to continue her father's legacy if something happened to her. So right there, in her subconscious mind, she summoned up together the will to live again. When she woke up, the world was silent. Way too silent for her liking. The smell of antiseptic filled her nose and machines beeped softly around her. A bandage was wrapped around her head and her arms. She tried to move, but her body felt heavy, like it no longer belonged to her. She opened her eyes slowly, but she could not see anything. Nothing at all. No light, no color, no shadow. All she could see was darkness. She closed her eyes and opened them again, but darkness was still before her. Panic rushed through her. She blinked rapidly, waving her hands in front of her face, but there was nothing. Fear clawed at her throat, but she forced herself to remain calm. The doctors later explained that the accident had caused severe trauma. Her eyes were physically fine, they said, but her brain had shut down her vision as a response to shock and grief. Trauma-induced blindness, the doctor explained gently. Sometimes it is temporary, sometimes permanent. We don't know if or when her sight will return, he continued. Charles was there, gripping her hands tightly, his voice shaking with concern. He promised to stay by her side, to be her eyes, her strength, her everything. He promised to be there with her all the way. Though Neoma was pained by the sudden change of events, she had a ray of hope, knowing that Charles stood by her. You are wondering where Ebube was, Abi? Don't worry. Ebube was there, seated beside her, crying loudly, drawing attention to her tears, also swearing loyalty and friendship forever to Neoma. When Neoma returned home, she returned not just as a grieving daughter, but as a woman the world believed was broken. She now needed someone to do every single thing for her. The independent woman had now become dependent for even the basic thing, something as basic as eating and using the restroom. Immediately after she got home, she called for a meeting in her office, publicly handing over temporary authority to Charles, announcing that she needed time to heal. The board sympathized with her, but they were not pleased with her decision. But what choice did they have? In the beginning, Charles played his role perfectly. He moved into Neoma's apartment so that he could take proper care of her. The house was big, so why not? He always spoke softly to Neoma, spoke to her like she was a queen, pampered her like a baby. A fly could not even touch Neoma as long as Charles was there. His concerns were exaggerated, too dramatic. Oh, baby, what will you eat? Oh, let me give you a bath. Oh, should I help you walk? Oh, should I breathe for you? He wanted everyone to see that he was a loyal man who stayed when his powerful woman fell. But even the disguises never survived time. Remember that the doctor said the blindness could be temporary or permanent. Charles thought it would be temporary, so he spent a few weeks trying to be extremely nice so that if by some miracle her sight returned, he would be seen as the good husband material. However, a few weeks passed and Neoma's sight did not return. Charles concluded that this had to be permanent, and then his true nature began to leak out. He started coming home late, sometimes past midnight, carrying the scent of unfamiliar perfumes on his clothes. Neoma could sometimes swear that she heard the voices of a strange woman echoing through the house. Charles would use the excuse of them being big clients who wanted to partner with the wine factory. Neoma could still not make sense of what he was saying, but she decided to go with the flow. What choice did she have? Soon enough, Charles no longer spoke to Neoma with respect. His tone hardened. He snapped at her even when it was unnecessary. His patience disappeared. Her meals came in later than usual, and sometimes there was no food for her at all. His excuse was work. Now, Neoma, even if you don't have eyes, you should have the sense to know that someone needs to keep your business running, he said angrily one day when she confronted him. Things became so hard for Neoma. She had no one to call because of course she was blind, so how would she even operate her phone? Even her best friend, Ebube, that one, her own was even worse. Ebube moved into Neoma's house 1 month after Neoma's accident. It was then that Neoma realized that her fiancé and her best friend had been lovers all along. The worst part of the whole thing was that they did not even try to hide their affair from her. They slept in the same room, laughed loudly at night, and to crown it all, she could hear all the naughty things they did in the bedroom, in her own house, under her roof. They would gossip about her in front of her, mocking her at the same time. They spoke about her as if she were not there. Sometimes they intentionally raised their voices so she could hear them. They tormented her physically, emotionally, and mentally. What pained her the most was realizing that there was absolutely nothing she could do about it. Neoma realized then that she was on her own. She realized too late that she had trusted a man who did not truly love her and a friend who was worse than the devil himself. One afternoon, Neoma was hungry, very hungry, so she walks into the kitchen hoping to find some snacks at least. As soon as she took the curve to the kitchen, she bumped into someone. Before she could say anything, a hot slap, very hot slap, landed on her face. "Are you blind?" the person asked. It was Ebube. Then, as if realizing herself, Ebube laughed. "Oh, I forgot. You are indeed blind. But I thought they said that blind people can smell someone from a distance. Abi, you also lost your sense of smell?" Neoma held her cheeks with her hand, tears filling her eyes. "Why, Ebube? What have I ever done to you? You of all people, I saw you as my sister. Why are you doing this to me?" Ebube smiled coyly. How does it feel to be powerless? How does it feel to be useless, to be seen as nothing, to be alone? You said I was your sister, but you knew I liked Charles, yet you took him from me. Guess what? I have taken back what is mine. I have possessed my possession. Too bad you cannot see how happy and beautiful we are together. Happy with my money." Neoma fired back angrily. Ebube laughed. "What do you plan to do with the money? You have no one. Your mother abandoned you years ago. Your father left you and died. And now you are blind. What do you need all this money for?" Neoma's heart broke into pieces. Ebube had opened her wound, a wound she was trying so hard to heal from. Still speechless, she turned and started counting her steps back to her room upstairs. That day, something miraculous happened. Usually, Neoma took the stairs carefully, one at a time. But today, she was in a hurry to go to her room and cry. Do I say fortunately or unfortunately, she slipped and fell, rolled back all the way down and fainted at the foot of the staircase. Ebube saw all that happened, but she just casually walked away like nothing happened. Neoma was out for about 15 minutes, but when she came to, she realized something. The darkness that had surrounded her for months began to crack little by little. Gradually, shapes of different sizes began to appear in front of her. It was blurred at first, but slowly everything became clearer and clearer. Her vision had returned. Neoma could not believe it. God had answered her prayer. She wanted to start jubilating, but her instincts kicked in immediately. She needed to be smart so that she could deal with Charles and Ebube accordingly. Life continued as usual. Neoma pretended like she was still blind. She enjoyed everything. She was watching their footsteps, recording conversations, filming them when they were not aware. She was gathering evidence. Their punishment was going to be brutal. She would make sure of it. Then one evening, Charles walked into her room, holding a file on one arm and a briefcase on the other. He shoved a document in front of her. "Sign here," he said casually. "It's for the factory's restructuring." "You know I cannot sign something I have not read," Neoma responded calmly. Charles scoffed. "It's not like you can read it. Just sign, I beg." He sounded impatient. Neoma nodded. "Of course I cannot read it since I'm blind. Get me my lawyer, please, Charles." Charles flared up. "Are you doubting me? Wait, you don't trust me? You ungrateful bat. Me that has pitied you and is managing your business, make sure that the factory is running smoothly. And here you are, sitting, doing nothing. And you have the mind to make it look like I'm trying to swindle you. You and your factory will be nothing if not for me. Neoma smiled to herself. It was his audacity and confidence for her. Still smiling and not uttering a single word, Neoma signed the document. Or so Charles thought. Charles smiled to his victory, picked his document and walked away. She felt a pang of sadness. She never imagined that her fiancé and best friend, the ones she thought stood by her, would betray her in this manner. She had taken her time to softly review the documents. They were documents for a permanent handing over of the company to Charles. What Charles did not know was that Anichebe had taught his daughter to think ahead. He had warned her that legacies attracted enemies. He had taught her how to alter a signature just enough to render a document legally useless. She had intentionally altered her signature. She altered it just enough to make the document invalid. That day, for the first time since her accident, Neoma was thankful for her blindness. She did not know that the tragic accident would be a light in her darkness. She did not know that her temporary blindness would save her from a very disastrous and toxic marriage. A marriage that would eventually cost her everything. Unknown to Charles and Ebube, Neoma had not been idle. Immediately her sight returned, she gathered her courage together and contacted Chidi. To her surprise, after the way she had treated him, Chidi still showed up for her. And he held nothing against her. In fact, he made Neoma know that he had been secretly watching the winery from afar. He knew all that had been happening there, things that even Neoma did not know. He had been patiently waiting for her call before he stepped in. Neoma was beyond happy. At least she had someone in her corner. She sent Chidi all the evidence she had gathered, and they started making their own plans. 1 week after the document signing, Charles, preparing to take his place as the new CEO of Anichebe's winery, called for a grand board meeting, confident with the documents that Neoma had signed for him. He had been waiting for this moment, the moment he would announce himself as the new owner of Anichebe's winery. He swaggered in like a king, Ebube by his side. The boardroom was packed with investors and staff who had their resignation letters ready. Charles even went as far as contacting journalists to record the life-changing moments for him. They were all seated and ready to begin when suddenly the doors opened. Neoma walked in. There was no cane in her hand. Nobody was by her side to aid her, not even a shake in her step. She moved with grace on her majestic heels, unruffled, perfectly tailored suits, not a single hair out of place. The journalists began their work. The cameras clicked. Charles's arrogant smile faded, and Ebube nearly stopped breathing. "Good morning," Neoma's voice rang out firmly. Charles was dumbfounded. He moved close to her and hugged her tightly. "My love, you can now see." Ebube leaped up for joy. "Thank you, Jesus." Neoma laughed in mockery at the display of pretense from the both of them. "You both make me laugh." She laughed again. Ebube and Charles had confusion written all over them. "Hypocrites. I see you two thought my blindness would hide your evil deeds. You thought my suffering would silence me. You thought I could not see the hearts of you conniving idiots. Charles's face became innocent. How, my love? All I've done is help you keep things in order until you are better. See, I'm so glad you are here. Nelma laughed again, clapped her hands twice. The doors opened and Chidi stepped in. He went straight to the projector and played the videos Nelma had sent to him, followed by the voice recordings. Everyone gasped. Nelma looked around the room. This is how these two people have been stabbing me, conniving against me to steal from me, she blurted out. Charles burst into laughter, clapping his hands. Bravo, Nelma, bravo. You must have planned this carefully. Congratulations. You must be so proud of yourself. But you are too late. You already signed away your company to me. Anichebe Winery now belongs to me. In your dreams, Nelma fired back. The altered documents that Charles once presented to the board, which he used to deceive them, were laid bare for everyone to see. If you were half as smart as you think you are, then you would have realized that there was something off about that signature. I could even arrest you for signature forgery. Charles looked at the signature properly and saw it immediately. He was shocked. Nelma, this can't be true, he stammered. He could not even find a single word to defend himself. This was Nelma's plan, not to give him a room for defense. Ebube, on the other hand, shrieked in panic. You witch! You can't do this! You can't! She moved towards Nelma, about to grab her neck. But Chidi already had the security on standby. They moved in immediately, pounced on the both of them and fetched them like rats caught in a trap. Ebube and Charles were busy, screaming their lungs out as they were bundled away and the journalists were clicking away. The news channels would have a field day. They would have something juicy to show during the night news. Nelma reclaimed more than her company that day. She reclaimed her dignity, her sense of self, and her power. The month of pain, of darkness, of pretending to be less than she was, became the vessel that forced her into being a leader beyond ordinary reckoning. With Chidi by her side, they restored Anichebe's winery, very sure that her father would be so proud of her. And who knows, maybe someday, she and Chidi will build together something even bigger than a factory. Something that begins with an L and ends with the letter E. Guess what? Hey lovers, it's your girl, the story guru. Thank you for listening to this story. If you are new here, welcome to our community. I hope you enjoyed listening to this story as much as I enjoyed creating it. If you have not done so already, please hit the subscribe button, and to support the growth of our community, give this video a big thumbs up. If you know someone who would enjoy a story like this, do not hesitate to share. Don't forget to leave a comment down below. Remember, like, share, drop a comment, and subscribe. I'll take my leave now, but I'll see you in my next video. Bye.